sure we'll have more members joining us as we go. We're going to go ahead and record this session and get a chance to talk to some of our experienced online faculty and their experience with their role as an instructor and interacting with students in the online environment. So today we have Rebecca Adams, Royce Ann Collins, Russ Feldhausen, Kathleen Haas-Cruz, and Suzanne Porath joining us. And we don't have a presentation, so I'm actually going to stop my share right now, and we will just have those folks share their thoughts on several different questions as we go through today. If you have further questions for them, if you would please post those in the chat box, and as we go through, we will let those presenters know that you have those questions in addition to the ones we're starting with. So let's go ahead and just get started. So our first question is, what changes have you noticed in the role of a teacher in the online environment? And why don't we start with you, Russ? Go ahead.
Sure. So I guess for me, the biggest change that I've noticed teaching online is the amount of preparation that it takes. And that's something I've heard from a lot of my colleagues is, when you teach in a classroom, it takes a certain amount of preparation, thinking about your slides, your presentation, how you're going to get the topic across. But I feel like it's much easier in a classroom situation to walk into a room with a set of slides and an idea and then go for 50 minutes or an hour and 15 minutes, however long your class is. When you're teaching online, it's harder to do that because you have to think about all of the different ways you're presenting material to your students. You can't react to the audience very well and elaborate on a certain point. And so I find that I spend much more time preparing what I want to teach. But on the flip side of it, I feel like that the actual amount of content is much less. And that's because I can be a little bit more precise and I can be a little bit more directed about what I'm presenting. And so what might take 50 minutes in a classroom, I can get across in 2 or 3 10-minute videos.
Excellent, thank you. Royce Ann, why don't you go?
Well, I would echo what Russ just said about time and prep. That was number one on my list too, is that it does take a lot more time and prep, thinking ahead, thinking about what devices you can use, finding those videos that you can use. So you need to plan ahead for every session and how you're going to do that. The other thing that I find is I like active learning in the classroom, and so my rooms are very small group conversations, types of events, and I'm always having something that they're doing. That's much more difficult with Zoom. Zoom is I talk, then you talk. It's not a conversation as you can have in the room. And so the delay in that is getting used to that as an instructor has been one of those things that I've seen that I've had to do. And getting used to the breakout rooms. I do use the breakout rooms, but when I go into it, there's a delay. When I leave that one to get to the next one, there's a delay. When I go, it's not the same as walking around the room. It's not the same as me hearing across the room this small group saying something, I need to go redirect them. I have to physically go into their space. And then, of course, they stop talking because they suddenly see you're there. So the dynamics change. So I think that's what I found is it's a different kind of tempo and approach to learning.
Excellent. Thanks so much. Kathleen, why don't you give your thoughts?
I would find that it's challenged me to be much more a facilitator of learning than the in the online, in the on-campus environment, I tend to be much more okay, this is what you're going to learn. This is how you're going to do it. This is what I said. This is, all this other stuff. I'm very much more directive. I have I mostly teach freshmen, so that's kind of what I need to be doing anyway. But in the online environment, you kind of just have to trust that they're going to do it on their own. I mean, the ideal professor is the facilitator anyway, so it really does challenge me to be more of a facilitator, set up the environment in such a way that they can be successful, and then I have to be able to just step back and trust that they can do that.
Excellent addition. Thanks. And Rebecca, if you could go ahead and share your thoughts.
Are completely asynchronous. So I'm not doing Zoom interactions. And one thing I found was that while the lectures take a lot of prep, it was harder to figure out how do I translate my activities in class to something that's completely asynchronous. So thinking about what is the end goal, is it practice or is it discussion where different mediums would be better? Whereas in class, I just give them a sheet and say, answer these questions with each other. Maybe that could be done in a different way. And then the other thing I actually had to figure out was how do I balance the rigor of the course and the difficulty with getting them to participate. And so like the grade balance on that took some time to make sure that they are going through it, because I also teach mostly freshmen. How do I make sure you're going through it, but it doesn't completely weight your grade to strictly participation grades? So that took a little time to figure out.
Great point. Finally, Suzanne, your thoughts on this?
So one of the things to echo off of Russ is the prep part of it, videos and things like that too, but also re-looking at instructions, that when you hand out instructions in class, you can go over them and answer questions right away. And what goes along with that is, even though my instructions are really detailed, students don't always read them. And so having the patience that when they email me with a question that is clearly in the directions, not to take that personally and take a breath and just go back in the directions and say, it was in the directions, here it is, but not like in a snarky way. And it's really hard to tamp down that emotion, like, if you would just read it, it's there. But we're all dealing with so many things, and I've talked with so many students about lack of focus and motivation and things like that. So recognizing that they're going through that too, and to give them the great grace to answer the question, even though it is in the syllabus, it is in the addendum, it is in the directions, I created a video of it. Take a breath and say, this is what you need to do, with a smile on your face.
That's a great addition, Suzanne, because that is really a challenge for us to, give them all the materials up front, but then redirect, right? Because they struggle. It can be really hard for them to navigate a course and understand the expectations and how to do everything, especially in the case of several of you that are dealing with freshmen that may not really be familiar with higher education learning in general and how self-directed that needs to be. So this kind of parallels with that. So our next question is, what are the changes that you've noticed in the role of the students in the online environment? And what are some of the things that you've done to kind of help with that? And so Suzanne, if you want to kind of expand on what you were saying, that would be great.
Well, for me particularly, so much of what we do in the College of Ed, we expect our students to have practicums where they're working with K-12 students. And so that has been a huge shift for us as we move from face-to-face to online and taking away the practicum. So trying to provide experiences that are clearly not the same, that are going to be able to help them do the thinking they need to do as a teacher. And one of the mind shifts in the roles that students have to do, and I think Rebecca said it, or Kathleen, I can't remember, that because it is so self-directed, that they have to take it upon themselves to get the most out of it. And as an instructor, recognize that not everybody is going to perform like they did in the classroom, and be okay with that. This is remote teaching in an emergency, not an online course. And so supporting our students as much as possible, talking with them about how they can get the most of what we currently have, but being realistic at the same time with what they can. So they're moving from being very social and being very externally motivated because of their peers in the class and doing things together. And now clearly with the A pass fail, some of them are calculating, how much do I have to do to get the pass? And recognizing that as realistic. If I could pass out on some of the stuff that I'm doing, I'd probably take it too.
Great thoughts. Thanks. I think I'll try and go in reverse order of who I asked if I remember that. So Rebecca, go ahead.
So I would say that one of the biggest things that I had to pay attention to with students is that I have to protect my time with my boundaries, because they are going to do it on Sunday night when it's due. Just no matter how many times I tell them, don't start your exam Sunday at 11, that's what they're going to do. So I think just predicting that kind of thing. But I think too much of how adaptable they are. But in class, we'll say it 4 and 5 times, 4 or 5 class periods, but trying to remember that I did show them a video. That doesn't mean they watched it and retained it. In class, I would have told them. So making sure that they do need that reinforcement, even in online, just the single video. So every week I have to go back and tell you, because that's how it would have been in a classroom as well.
Great point. Yeah, using the announcements as reminders, those kinds of things are really valuable too. Kathleen, go ahead.
That has been their big struggle. It's funny that you asked this question, because Sunday I fielded, or not Sunday, what day is it? Wednesday. Yesterday I had a couple of very, speaking of snarky student emails. They had not realized that their first discussion post had been due last weekend. Because of the way that my discussions work, there's only one due date, unfortunately. And and I had to teach a hybrid course anyway, so it was me. I was trying not to be frustrated, and it was very hard, because all of the things that they said, well, why didn't I know this was here? I had, since the beginning of the semester, these were things that they should have been doing already. Being on-campus students anyway. I have a very heavy hybrid course. Most of their content's online. So it was, somebody was talking about just taking back and being like, trying not to and it probably sounded, I tried to be like, okay, so here's where my confusion is. And I honestly said this to the student. This is stuff I've been asking you to do since the beginning of the semester. So I don't really understand why you didn't, you didn't get that this was what you were, you didn't find this piece of information, is what I was trying to get to her. But I did sort of go back and say, because this is a rough transition for some of you, I am not taking off that many points for this. So they lose a point, maybe 1.5 points if they don't post on time. Because I know that they're frustrated. And what happened is she was frustrated. They were frustrated themselves for a variety of reasons, and she was taking it on me. So I tried to remember that and not snap back at her. She probably interpreted the email that way anyway, but I tried to be very hey, here's all the things that you can do to be familiar with this information. So they're really, really struggling with the self-direction. And since I am doing the same with my grading right now, I try to be okay, so as a result, I think I'm going to do an extra drop option assignment. Another discussion board. We were going to end this week, but I think I'm going to do one more and just be like, hey, if you screwed up, try it again. I'll drop the lowest scoring discussion. This is your third chance to do this time. So just not letting that frustration boil over has been huge in dealing. And I'm answering the first question again, so I apologize. I'll shut up.
No, that's great though, but just being aware of the transition issues that our students are having now, and how we can help them be more successful too. So Royce-Ann, why don't you add your thoughts?
Well, I think there's two different things here. You're right. Right now, our students are transitioning from a shock kind of thing, and They're also working from home. Many of mine are parents. They're trying to figure out how to help their children learn their lessons, as well as do their work, as well as keep up with their classes. So there's these multi-layers. There's the other thing that's going with them is that they've had to learn how to book their schedules at their house and how to structure their own time, because I have rural students, as I'm sure many of you do too. The internet access is slower and only one person can be on at a time. So mom gets on really early before everybody gets up, then dad gets it, then one of the children gets it, then another child gets it, then dad or mom gets it again. And this is the way it goes throughout the entire, until everybody goes to bed, right? So remembering that that's what they're going through at the moment. Teaching normally online, my students are not like that. They don't have to juggle like this. So remembering just it, this particular situation is going to put them in a little bit of a different set, and where I thought my students were used to this kind of online learning and had their schedule down, this threw them into a tailspin. And so again, patience, grace, not lowering my rigor, but giving some grace with the situation. And some of my students learning that they're not as self-directed as they thought they were. So again, trying to help them develop those self-directed skills.
Thanks. Yeah, the self-directed skills really are key. Russ, any additional thoughts?
I mean, I would definitely echo from the student perspective, the importance of switching from external motivation to internal motivation is really key. The one thing that I was going to mention that I hadn't seen yet was I feel like I spend a lot of time reminding my students that because we're doing stuff online, the time delay of getting questions answered and getting grades back can be really brutal. You know, if you're used to starting an assignment on Friday that's due on Sunday and having a chance to ask a couple of questions in class, you can get that done in the space of 5 minutes, whereas sending emails back and forth might mean a day response time. You know, I try and answer an email when it comes in within a business day, but if there's 2 or 3 questions, that's 2 or 3 business days before they can really get back to that. And so I always tell students that, you know, it's better to start early and ask your questions early because of that response time that can just be so brutal toward the end.
Great points. Suzanne added in the discussion that she is kind of creating another assignment that doesn't have submission to help them monitor that first due date within a discussion. I've noticed also that a new feature in the discussion board is to add to the student's to-do date. To-do list rather, that it adds a reminder there. I'm testing it out in the new Course Development Institute, so hopefully that will work well for all of you. Our due dates are rather loose, but just trying it out to see if that helps remind people to have that first post done sometime in the midweek, Wednesday, Thursday, depends on how you're doing it, and that final post by the end of the week. And Andrea is adding an input that internet is an issue for instructors as well, and I would agree with that. Someone from the Course Design Institute posted that they are juggling between themselves and their children and their spouse 19 different online courses right now. You know, trying to find slots where everybody can have time to be online, and very, very difficult. And not knowing that environment very well and not being able to see the facial cues and how to communicate. And, you know, Kathleen, you were hearing a tone in that email from your student. Maybe if they said it to you in person, that could have gone in a different direction, right, and not have been as frustrating. If we could take it in a slightly different direction, we've been talking about, you know, our current experience and trying to help our students transition right now. How can we also help our faculty, our instructors, be successful starting the summer? And what are the communications that you feel are really key to helping your students be ready at the beginning, those introductions, those orientations to your course that will help them really start the summer off well. Rebecca, why don't you go first?
So one thing that I think helps, and I know it's, summer being compressed, but certainly in the regular semester, I take about 2 weeks to really get warmed up so that they're comfortable. So just showing them with low stakes assignments what it's going to be like, and what that schedule looks like. Also, just tons of announcements. At the beginning of every week, I do a video of me. Here are the 12 things you are going to do this week in this order. This module walks you straight through these. So just reiterating over and over again, here's what you need to do. Wednesday, here's the announcement. Don't forget, here's what we're doing Sunday. So especially in a regular semester, those first 2 weeks, I spend a lot of time doing that and then taper it off. For summer, I'd say same thing, especially if they've never done this before, the students, just make sure you're there giving them those details as much as you can. And if you can start them a little slower, that could be helpful too, just to get them adjusted.
Great point. Suzanne, why don't you give us your thoughts on that?
So one of the things I've been talking with my colleagues is to remember that online is not a replication of face-to-face. And so trying to do exactly what you did in the face-to-face classroom online is going to be frustrating for both you and your students. So thinking about that, it is a completely different medium. So how can you leverage the things that you actually have? That being said, I know a lot of us end up doing videos, and we know that you look at TED Talks, they're like 17 minutes or less because students struggle to stay focused for long enough if it is longer than that. And in some cases, and this is in talking with my students, they're like, if it's an hour-long video, I'm not even going to bother because I know I don't have the time to do it. So making sure that things are chunked up into little pieces that's clearly labeled, and when I put videos in, I give them how long it's going to be so they can plan their time to be able to watch it. So chunking things up, and even the orientation, I can easily go on for 20 minutes about, and this course is about this, this, and this, and we're going to do this. But that's going to be really overwhelming. So what do you need to know right now? And I think most of us have design of, introduction module and then week 1. And there's 2 different things. So in the introduction, it's getting oriented to the actual course, and the content doesn't start until a little bit later, and chunking that up into little things. And so giving a taste of, if you're going to use a discussion board and make it a complete and incomplete, and not necessarily a grade, but that you're trying it out to play with it. It's a sandbox the first time. Same if you do Flipgrid, and if you want to talk about Flipgrid, come talk to me, because Laura, you know how much I love Flipgrid. So if you want to use Flipgrid, that the first one is an introduction. It's not graded, it's not high content itself, but just so they know how to use those things. So giving a little bit of leeway, and I know with summer courses, it's going to be accelerated, but it's going to make them feel more comfortable coming into it, that they can play for the first part of it and then get into the deep part of it.
Great points, thanks. Raisan, why don't you go?
I would echo some of the things that Suzanne said about allowing them to play. I have them create a page in the course and a couple of assignments. Sometimes those are group projects, sometimes they're individual, but there's a blank one, and it's called the Sandbox, and you get to go play on there and put videos and mess it up and do whatever, but it's completely free and open to the students. So we do that. The other thing is, a lot of the things that people have echoed, but before the class starts, you can send them an email out and just say, look, this is your first online course, here's some key things that you should look for. You should look for the modules first. Then you'll see each one has a week. Then you should look for announcements every day, because that's where I'm going to be in and posting more recent things. These things help them understand. And here's, we have an introduction to Canvas for students. So here's a link to that. Go see what this is like if you've never done this. But then they will get into their rhythm. I also agree with Kathleen that you start them out slow. I have them do an introduction the very first week. That's all we're going to do. You do a video introduction and tell us who you are. And the other thing is getting them to show their faces in their pictures. If we can get them to make connections with each other, and the best way to do that is if I see you, because if I just see on, for instance, right now on Zoom, I have the gallery view. Some people are just black with their names. That's a name, that's not a person. So it's getting them connected quickly in that very first week. It'll help you, and it'll help you connect with them too.
Great point. Russ, why don't you add your thoughts?
Yeah, I would definitely key on that. One of the things that I try and focus on for online, especially in the summer, is building authenticity very quickly. And so, you know, I built, my class is more asynchronous. And so I have package lectures that are recorded, that are very well produced. They're very boring. And so I have that. And then I try and counterpoint that with a couple of videos of me sitting in front of a camera, unscripted, trying to make that authentic connection with students that I would normally do the first day of class. And the whole goal is, especially since I teach an upper level course, I need my students to understand that I'm going to ask you to do difficult things, and it's not going to make sense, and you're going to have questions, and that's okay, and you need to ask me those questions. And especially since I teach in engineering, it's really difficult sometimes to get students to understand that it's okay to ask questions and to feel like you don't know what's going on. Sometimes that's the point, is I'm going to give you something hard to do. And so I really try very quickly in the beginning of the semester to build that authenticity, let them see me as a person that they can reach out to, that they can communicate. One thing I did last semester is when I recorded a couple of my videos, I made a blooper reel and I added it to the end of my first announcements. Like, see, I'm not perfect. Here's all the bloopers I made trying to make this video. And it was something that helps them see me as somebody that they can reach out to and ask questions.
Excellent. Rebecca had something she wanted to add to that real quick before we move on to Kathleen.
I'm really glad you said that, because I keep a blooper reel too, and I think especially I have them record videos, and when they see me go, what did I just say? And they'll do the same thing at the end. They're like, oh, look at how long this took me. And a couple of my colleagues have also done things like get on TikTok. It's kind of ridiculous, but it shows them that we can be ridiculous also, that we're just people, and that's helped create a really good connection. I hadn't done that until this semester, but now I get emails that, oh, at least that was funny for the week. So figuring out how to be you and have fun connects with them too.
That's a fantastic point. Your personality definitely needs to come through and allow those students to see it and share their own personality. Definitely. Kathleen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
The thing I've learned through online teaching, and this may not be news to any of you, but is to show your face. Even if it's asynchronous, they need to see your face. So one of the things that I had to learn early on is that even though there are Canvas student guides and this, that, and the other video, I feel like they get a little bit offended by that. Like, well, I can do that myself. So even though there's a video for this, I will do one for me. Like where I'm either they're just hearing my voice, or they are showing my face, or this is how to use Canvas. My video, I recorded it based on my course. And that seems to be reinventing the wheel. But I'm going to be honest, I watch a lot of YouTube. And you develop a connection with the vlogger, with the YouTube influencer, because you see their face all the time. You've never met this person in your life, and you've never even like commented, but you feel like you know them because you see their face all the time. And that's how we feel like we know celebrities. So I do the same thing in my course. I use my voice and I put my face out there, even if it means I'm redoing something that they really could probably go watch in another video that somebody else did. I put my face and my voice out there so they feel like I'm there. And it is weird because sometimes they act like they know you and you're like, I've never met you before. I don't know who you are. You're a voice, you're a face, you're an email. But they act like they know you because they see you all the time on a camera doing lecture.
great point. And so we had a question or a conversation going on in the chat. Kathy had asked about the release process of your content, and should we try to limit that so we don't overwhelm folks, or have the whole course open? And Suzanne, Suzanne offered some thoughts on that as well, but do any of you have any additional thoughts on whether you slow release your content or just have the whole semester open?
I did a slow release, and then I read Suzanne's post, and my students too got frustrated. They wanted to see the whole thing. And so while my discussion boards are locked down and you can't move ahead, you can see the whole course and what's coming at you. So there are certain slow release things like the discussion board, maybe even assignments before they can finish it, you know, and upload it and all of that. But there's an element of being able to see the whole thing that everybody needs.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I've tried to structure my classes through modules where it's all gated so they can see the scope of the course. They may not be able to see the content right away, but they know what it is. But the other side of things that I've run into is originally I tried to build my asynchronous courses very flexible with loose due dates. And we found that that was really setting students up for failure. They thought they would be more flexible about it. They thought they would have more time, and then they would get behind, and then they never could catch up. And so it's something that we've actually gone back and been much more strict about deadlines and encourage students that you can always go faster, but we're going to have something due every week or twice a week or something. And there's this minimum pace that you've got to keep up with.
During the regular semester, I keep it to a week because I think, like Roseanne was saying, they want to see what they have to do this week, and they can't always stay on a daily schedule. I would love to be able to keep them on that schedule, and that's where I use the announcements. It's midweek. You probably want that discussion out there. For the summer, though, since it is so much faster, I do keep it to a Wednesday and Sunday, so they can see the whole week. But you have stuff due Wednesday, you have stuff due Sunday, since we're moving so much faster. But I do keep the hard due dates. They're just a little, they can see the week, but they do have a shorter timeline.
And something else with summer that we've seen is, and who knows how it's going to be this summer, but so many families have travel plans. And as compared to a regular semester, for a regular semester, most people are pretty much in the routine of you're pretty much around, but a lot of families do have travel plans in the summer. And so internet access for people who are regularly fine may be more difficult. And so many of the instructors that I work with have created a little bit more flexibility in being able to move ahead at a faster pace in the summer that we don't typically do in the fall and spring semesters.
That's a great point. Fully online students often have other things coming up in their lives. For summer, it may be travel. For the regular semester, it could be a business trip or something like that. So having that option to work ahead really can be beneficial to them. We had a couple of comments in the discussion as well about, you know, whether or not they can see that sort of course at a glance in the syllabus, and certainly we encourage you to include that in the syllabus so that students see the whole picture of the semester and what they're going to be expected to do. So that's a good way to give them that overall picture as well.
I'd like to throw in something about the course and the travel. I included my syllabus that they can work ahead. But, you know, I've had students that, you know, want to go on a cruise and take the class late or get exceptions for that. So I try to, I'm a little, not harsh, but I'm like, if you have this coming up, I expect you to work ahead. Like if you're not going to be, you know, if you're going to be incognito when you signed up for a class, knowing that you were going to go on a cruise, like I'll let you work ahead, but I'm not going to, you know, let you take the test 2 weeks late because you need to go on a cruise. So I feel that I don't apologize for having some standards when it comes to voluntary vacation like that. I taught summer school from Guatemala, so I don't allow. I'm not too flexible.
And Azia had asked about giving an estimate of how much time they should spend to work on certain assignments. That is really challenging because students work at very different paces. You know, they all are going to kind of complete the work in their own way and their own timeline. So giving some general broad guidelines may help them. Certainly if it's a big project, emphasizing that they're not going to be able to get it done in one weekend, something along those lines. And we do have a few tools in the Institute that talk through kind of the amount of time we might expect an assignment. But again, that's the average student and really can vary quite a bit. Okay, so let's see. So if you all could share with us what has surprised you most about your experience online teaching, and you know, what have you been surprised by positively, right? What's different and you feel kind of works even better in the online environment? Go ahead, Kathleen.
I love my non-traditional students. I have developed a joy. I teach basic nutrition and I teach nutrition in the lifespan. And one of the benefits of teaching in an environment where you're more likely to get students who are parents who have children in the home is that you get these wonderful personal experiences that you aren't necessarily going to get in a classroom full of your traditional 18-year-old freshmen, you know, when you're talking about infant feeding or children or elders or those things. I really also enjoy their dedication. They're here to win it. Like, they've made their mistakes or they're doing this again, or, you know, they really take stuff seriously. And not that my freshmen don't, but I find a level of dedication in my non-traditional online only students that's can be challenging at times, but it's also really enjoyable.
Rebecca, what are your thoughts on that?
So I kind of echo that how well I get to know them. It's a little skewed. I think they feel like they get to know me a little better. So I get baby pictures and vacation pictures, and that's really neat. I also really like that it feels a little more laid back. My online students are working this into their regular life, whereas students on campus, this is their life. So they can have things going on, and so can I. So when the dog jumps up here at the window, it's like, well, this is my house, so this is what's happening. So that's kind of neat that it's just a little calmer and a little more personal in that way.
Suzanne?
So this is going to sound really weird, but I'm an English teacher. Did you ever read like a really good book and you really want to savor the words? You slow yourself down, you enjoy it. And I think I'm able to do that more online because in the fast pace of a face-to-face class, you're going through your agenda, you're making sure you're doing things. And even when like a really powerful comment is made or something neat, you might do an offhanded comment, but the neat thing in online is you can savor those moments, but it's also a lot easier to highlight them for other students to learn from. And it just gives me warm tinglies all over when I'm reading something that is like, wow, that is absolutely amazing. And I want to share it with everybody. And there's a lot easier way to do that.
Great point. Yeah, calling out one particular discussion post and saying, everybody go read so-and-so's thoughts, because, oh my gosh, it's just awesome. Go ahead, Royce-Ann.
I'm going to give you a different spin on this. You know, I have been teaching with Zoom and in a hybrid course with graduate students for some time now. And I was surprised to see, yes, they are more relaxed, but sometimes they get a little too relaxed. And I've had to create Zoom etiquette. And it involves things like, you know, when you're on the screen, you're still like you're physically in class. So I really don't like seeing people in pajamas. That just doesn't really help me teach. So, and I know you'd be surprised, but yes, I have seen things and gone, okay, take a breath and don't freak out, but try to address this situation, because I never would have dreamed some of the things I've seen. I don't mind kids running behind you. I get that part, you're at home. I get that sometimes pets come in, sometimes mine do, but you're still in class. And so laying on the couch or laying on bed with your computer beside you, that is not being in class. So think about those things. I didn't think about it, and suddenly I had to in a class.
What do you mean? I wore my PJs to class all the time in undergrad. Yeah, you have a good point there, though. How about you, Russ?
I mean, I'm sitting here in a jacket, but I'm definitely wearing shorts and flip-flops. One of the things that's been really interesting is, especially with this very current situation, is looking at things that would have been difficult to do previously that we can all of a sudden do. One of the things our department started doing the last few weeks is what we call tea time office hours. And several of us have talked about this for a while, of just having an open time where faculty hang out in a room and we invite students to come in and talk about life or whatever. And we just never got it done on campus. And then this happened and we're like, we have no better excuse than to do this right now. And so we've started doing it. We have an open Zoom room a couple of times a week. And then as we were doing this, we were like, why can't we have alumni or industry reps come in here as well? And so I posted on Facebook and LinkedIn and said, hey, K-State alumni, we're doing this, you should come in. And we've done it twice now, and we've had different discussion topics about classes and how they transfer to industry or what's going on in industry right now. And we've really had some amazing discussions of, K-State alumni that have come back, that have been in industry for 5 or 10 years, that are really willing to share their information with students. And since we're doing it with Zoom, we can record it and share it with our freshman seminar, our senior software engineering classes, things that would have been much more difficult to arrange trying to do this on campus and bring these people in. All of a sudden, with everybody on Zoom, we can do some of these things. And so it's kind of really changed our perspective on how we can build some of these community connections that would have been more difficult.
I love that. Yeah, the idea of bringing those experts and community leaders into the environment. It's really fabulous. Great point. Okay, and so my last formal question, if you will, what other insights or ideas, suggestions, encouragement, anything you each would like to add? And then we'll just kind of open it up to see if anybody has additional questions. Let's see, Rebecca, why don't you go?
So I was looking here. I just have 3 things. The first would be that your perception is from your organization. So obviously things have to change, and as long as you communicate that well, but making sure that you have thought through all those details and get them information, because especially right off the bat, as things, move through the semester, they've got an idea of who you are, but the perception comes from how organized you are. In a face-to-face classroom, I've walked in and been like, today is not going well. And then, next classes are fine, but online, you kind of have, really want to make sure you've got those details together. Group work presentations, those can be done. A lot of people think that you can't do that online, and you definitely can. I have students that have to film a video, post it to a discussion board, because we have group presentations that had to get done this semester. So those things can get done. And since we've transitioned so fast and maybe everybody's not ready for summer, either, the worst case is you do what you can. It is simple. They get what they need out of the class. The best case is that you just have a lot of fun with them, you get to know them, it's creative, and you just enjoy filming and putting yourself out there and all that. So yeah, that's kind of what I had.
Fantastic, thank you. Royce-Ann, go ahead.
I would say, number one, I would recommend that, remember, you don't have to type everything to the students. You can use the video recording, the audio recording on the assignments in SpeedGrader. You can do a Zoom recording. You have a lot of capabilities to do it in that medium versus typing everything. They get tired of reading it all, and you get tired of typing it all. Okay, so remember you have that, and it goes much smoother, and you're present. A lot of the things going back to the very front that we started with was being present and real, and in that situation, you're present and real. And I would say, you know, think about what your learning outcomes. What are your objectives of your course? Start there, and think about how you can do it in this new medium. It's a different format, not how I used to, but here's a different format. What are my tools that I can make this happen and accomplish the learning objectives? And maybe my assignments change. Maybe I think about this a little differently, but I would echo what Rebecca said. You can still do group assignments. You can still have them create a page. They can work on a page just like you can in Canvas. You just have to give them the rights to do it. They can create things there as a group. You can have them do group presentations. Don't think that that's all individual anymore.
Great points. Thank you. Russ, go ahead.
I would definitely agree with a lot of those. I've been watching the discussion as well. And I think for me, especially coming from a technology and computer science background, is if you're teaching online, use technology to your comfort level. And there's been a lot of great discussions online that says online teaching right now doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be good enough and comfortable for you. And so, I'm sitting here at my dining room table, and I have a lighting kit and a green screen, which I've had for a couple of years. You can get them on Amazon for $150. And that's what I'm comfortable with. But if you have a webcam and a headset microphone, and that's where you're comfortable, that's great. I have seen really great setups online where people just took a webcam and pointed it at a table, and they can do their lecture notes right on a white piece of paper. And that works fine too. So I definitely encourage you to use technology to your comfort level, but also reach out to your colleagues. Probably in your departments, you've got a lot of people that have done teaching online, or especially at K-State, there's a lot of people that have been teaching online, and there's some really cool things that you can learn. For a while, I wanted a teleprompter, and so I bought a $50 Amazon tablet and figured out how to turn it into a teleprompter. And so it's things that you can do that are not that difficult, but you just have to find your own comfort level.
Great point. Yeah, we shouldn't be pushing ourselves so hard, especially in this first iteration of your online course, to try all the new things and do all the technology.
Yeah, it will be gloriously imperfect, and that's okay.
Kathleen, go ahead.
Careful what you wish for. I remember at the beginning of the semester, I was talking to my graduate teaching assistant. She and I have been together for a while. And I said, you know what we need to do this semester? We need to work harder on our online students. Like I let it run on autopilot, and I don't interact with them as much as I should. And God has a great sense of humor and made sure that I spent this semester working on my online students.
Yep, we definitely have to focus on everybody right now, that's for sure. Suzanne.
One of the things that, because I do both face-to-face and online, I'm on campus as much as I'm at home. Well, no, I'm on campus usually more. But in our hallway, just like teachers all over the world, so much of our ideas come from the happenstance meeting in the hallway. Like, oh, I'm struggling with such and such. And right now, that is so much harder to do. We don't just happen to bump into each other on Zoom. It has to be planned. So one of the things that I'm intentionally doing is making sure I have my coffee chats with the people that feed me as an instructor. And so we can share practices and ideas. And we are better when we think together. And although getting Zoomed out is a real thing, a phone call is just as good. But making sure I'm being intentional about getting new ideas so I don't stay in my little, this is what I'm comfortable with, and just using that. So, we don't know what's going to happen come fall, but I think making sure that we have that. So, one of the things Russ had talked about, the big open meeting, we're doing what's called coffee EDUs, which in regular life, it's teachers get together in a coffee shop and just talk about practice. So we've done that with our pre-service teachers to talk about managing this time period, but we're also doing one with our local school district and the teachers this afternoon, actually. But we can also do that with faculty members. And just like you're recording here, and this is more formal, just having that informal conversation, people can be prompted to rethink things.
Great. Thank you all so much for your input on these questions. I hope everybody has found it valuable, and we have about 10 minutes. So if there's anybody who has additional questions that we'd like to have our panelists answer, you're welcome to type them into the chat or go ahead and unmute yourself now and join us by voice. So we'll just wait a few minutes and see if anybody has additional questions or thoughts. Hi, Marcella.
Yes, hi, Laura. I would like to second, I think it was Kathleen's comment about going easy on the students. And that can be a real learning curve when you think to yourself, gosh, I told them. I don't know how many times, but I've told them. But I have found that it works in my best interest if I just take that moment, suck it up and say, yeah, well, maybe we don't know what's going on in their lives at the moment. So I'm going to assume nothing and just go and kick a tree. You know, that's how I will vent, but it won't be on the student, and it works really well.
Fantastic. Any panelists' thoughts on that?
The only thing I would say also, oh, sorry, Russ.
Go ahead.
And I've sent emails where my emails are usually very concise. So sometimes it may come off as rougher. And I've even told students that that's not how I meant that, or apologize if that's how it came off. But thinking through how you would say something in person versus how, even an email when you see people in person, you know, when you don't see these people, then making sure the language is a little softer than you might normally use. And I've made that mistake and had to go back and you know, explain that's not how I meant that. But yeah, just thinking about that, all of it is text communication for the most part.
Yeah, and I would definitely echo that, especially teaching from home, and I've been working from home for a couple of years now. Your own mental health is really important. And so it's, I think Suzanne mentioned having those coffee chats with your peers and your faculty is really important. I have 2 or 3 faculty that I chat with usually every other day. And sometimes it's very useful to be able to vent to them really quickly what I'm frustrated about. And then I can go back to the students with a clearer head and be a little bit more calm and reassuring like I want to be. And so for me, having that mental health outlet is really important. And actually a couple of times we've had tea time office hours where not many students showed up and it's turned into more faculty hour, which is also fine.
I would also say one last thing to that, and then I'll be quiet. That I have even emailed students back and said, I will look at this tomorrow, or I'll look at this in 2 days. We will fix it, even if it's, you know, past the due date or something. But I'm not gonna deal with that right now. I'll deal with it later if I need to take that little bit of time to sleep on it and calm down about it. That we'll fix it later, but you're gonna wait for a few nicely.
Really great points. It is really important that you set some boundaries with your students too. You know, letting them know, you know, what your plan is to respond to them. And, you know, if you're going to take the weekends off, take the weekends off. It's really okay for you to have a life as an online instructor. You do not have to be on 24/7, even if sometimes your students might expect you to be there at 2 o'clock in the morning. You really don't have to be. And just, you know, make it clear to the students that you know, you're going to do things on the timeline that works best for you and for the class, but that you will respond to them.
I would just like to echo that, Laura, because when I first started teaching online, I got sucked into the 24/7 and I exhausted myself and almost burnt myself out. So you do have to set some limits. I put it up front in the very first page that they have to read. Here's, you know, some things that I know. I know that you're going to need some response on the weekend, and I will do that, but it will not be immediate. It'll be a little bit later. And if someone writes me in a panic, I may write back and say, I'm in the garden right now and I'll have to get back to you when I get in the house. So letting them know that you have other things going on in your life, it's important.
So I had put in the chat a file that I've shared with my faculty and also my students. Russ talked about self-care. Daily quarantine questions: who am I connecting with, letting go of, getting outside, moving my body, expressing creativity, self-care, and grateful. And so just reminding both ourselves that we need to do this, but to help our students take responsibility for doing that for themselves.
So we had a question about chat functionality in Canvas, and there is actually a chat tool in Canvas that is strictly chat. So if you set a time for open discussion, open office hours, and basically create a little, Twitter feed, Facebook platform, whatever, they just chat back and forth if they're all there at the same time. So it's only active when you open it up, and then you can use that. So take a look at any. I'll try and post the guide from Canvas on that chat feature. So definitely, if you're using Zoom, encourage your students to chat back and forth there. But the chat function in Canvas would be just in that moment of doing. You can certainly consider creating a discussion board that's open to those chat type environments where students can post their own topics, their own articles, whatever they've found, to kind of be really flexible with that.
I thought I might also share, sorry. I thought I might also share, if people are in the room who are not used to using Canvas a lot, that in order to make chat available or not available to your students, then you would go to settings in the left navigation and then to navigation in those settings, and you can drag and drop things off your menu. So if you're not seeing chat in your left navigation and you want it, you can pull it up to that view, or vice versa. If you have things in your navigation you don't want, you can pull them down.
So I was thinking, if I get a lot of email back and forth with a student, can I ask them just go pop over to the chat and we can clear this up in Canvas? That works.
You could. It would be open to anybody else that happened to pop into the chat as well. But yeah, you could definitely use that chat function that way.
Yep, and we've trained our GTAs that usually if they get in an email conversation, after about the second or third email, they'll just toss a Zoom link in there and say, let's go here, and we can chat really quickly. And so we found that works really well.
Any other last questions or thoughts as we wrap this up? Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you to our panelists. Really appreciate all of your thoughts and guidance that you've shared. This recording will be posted on the Global Campus YouTube site and within the course very soon, and so we'll make that available to everyone.
Laura, are you going to talk about the Keep Teaching Network?
I hadn't even thought about mentioning that. Do you want to talk about the one that's created by College of Ed, or just the general Keep Teaching?
Well, there is two of them, and because we're all
Yep.
having multiple roles now right now. So if you know, there's a platform called Mighty Networks, and I can throw it in the chat room. Oh, good. Trina did that. Trina, are you in
Awesome.
the K-12 one too? So there's two networks that basically is a Canvas Lite type thing that you can join by just having an email. We started one for the College of Education for teachers and parents who are dealing with remote learning and trying to do things at home. Thank you, Trina. And it's called PK12 Remote Learning, and it's got tons of resources, and it's organized by different topics. Global Campus has created one also called Keep Teaching, which is focused specifically in higher education. And it also has different categories of things like how do you do assessments in this time? How do you keep up with students? They're both really great resources. And it's not just an internal K-State thing, so it's across the country. So you can really hear what's going on in other places. I don't know if it's going to go on after this season, but you know, the season might go on for about a year or so. It's a great network to be part of, and you can be as active as you want, or you can just browse and get resources.
Excellent. Thanks for sharing that. That's a good point. Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and call it since we're at the top of the hour. Thank you all so much again. And if you have any further questions, we'd be happy to put you in contact with any of our presenters here. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer those as you go through this process. So thank you all again and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Laura, are you going to copy out the chat?